From the Tennessee Valley Weather Channel, this is the Weather Classroom.
We've all seen summertime storms develop, and it really doesn't have to be summer, it's just whenever storms develop. But during the summer months, you'll see a big billowing cloud that starts to build up. It becomes a storm. You see lightning off in the distance, and then you start to see rain that forms. But what's going on inside of this thunderstorm is something unique. It's what we call a downburst. And what happens is a strong thunderstorm with a strong updraft, so you get all this wind that is being rushed up into the storm. That's that breathing, kind of, if you will, of the storm, intaking that warm, moist air to cause it to rise, and you start to get a storm that develops. Well, every now and then, and this particularly happens during the summer months because there's not a lot of wind shear. Wind shear actually keeps storms alive, but if you don't have a lot of wind shear, you end up getting what's called the updraft weakening because the downdraft starts to get more intense. So that downdraft is all this hail and heavy rain that's happening up in the thunderstorm. It starts to kind of want to force its way down due to gravity. But if you have an updraft that keeps it at bay, that keeps the storm alive. But then that's kind of long-winded. Stop that. We'll just keep it going here. So this will be take 2. Take 2. All right. 3, 2, 1. Imagine you've been outside before during the summer months. You're sitting out there watching the skies, and all of a sudden you see this billowing cumulus cloud that starts to develop, and it becomes a storm. Well, in that process, at some point, you start to get to the point to where you have what's called a downburst, and it's different than a microburst, but it has some similarities. Let's talk about it. So you get a storm that starts to develop. You've got warm, moist air coming up and into the storm. That's kind of its lifeblood. It's breathing in that warm, moist air, so that allows the updraft to form. The updraft gets strong, and then way up in the updraft, you'll have the heavy rain and the hail that starts to form. There's two things going on at this point. You'll have heavy rain and hail that stays up in the clouds because the downdraft is not as strong as the updraft. So you still have the storm continuing to build and build and build. Well, then at some point, all that cool air, the rain, the hail that forms up there, it gets too strong for the updraft to maintain up there, and it all comes crashing down. And there you go with that downburst, all that big downward motion here. That strong surge of air from the storm hits the ground. It goes out in all directions. And that's what we call a downburst. Now, within that downburst, of course, you can expect some heavy rain, gusty winds, maybe some hail in there. And those winds could be on the order of 40, 50, maybe even 60 miles per hour. But again, that's not necessarily what we call a microburst, but it has some similarities in that it comes from the top of the storm and comes crashing down, and you get a big surge of wind that could cause some issues if you're outside and could cause some damage as well.